All right. For more on Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, let's bring in Deepwater Asset Management's Gene Munster. Gene, what'd you make of this?
Melissa, I felt like I was watching a different event just hearing the lead up. I've got a ton of respect for your esteemed panel. I had a totally different takeaway. True, check the box. All these features were to be expected, but Apple's doing two things here, and I think Steve framed this in. Number one is that they are allowing basically 20% of the world's population to access AI for the first time. We talk about it all the time. Most people have never experienced it, and they just made it that you can access in a personalized way that gets to your text, your photos. Elon may have a different view about Apple's privacy. It's a lot better than Meta or Google. So that's piece number one. Piece number two is just that, taking the friction out of access to it. You don't have to sign up for a ChatGPT account. It just comes with your device. I thought the demos that they showed, again, it was expected, but for the average person, this is must have. If you don't have AI powered, if Apple didn't do this, they would be totally out of luck over the long term. They did it, and I think that this will ultimately, the punchline here is they're going to grow next year faster than the street thinks. The street's looking for 6% growth. I bet it's going to be 10% plus.
Next year, meaning for full year, for fiscal year 2025.
Yeah, it's going to take time.
Correct?
I agree with Dan. I think Dan was talking about it's going to take time for this to build momentum. It's going to, this won't happen overnight, but this is a big deal. If you don't have these features, it's the fabric that's going to run the devices. If you don't have it, you're going to feel like you're on a flip phone.
So, Gene, when you think about sort of how this is monetizable, is it initially mostly going to be on the hardware side? In other words, when you're upgrading your iPhone, you're thinking about getting the more expensive version as opposed to the less expensive version, and eventually it turns into a services stream?
I think that's right. The first chapter, and I put that chapter over the next 1 to 3 years, is going to be this slow rising tide of upgrade. iPhone returning to 5%, 7% growth. I think the second phase is probably some specific services that they'll have around kind of higher feature AI. They didn't talk about agentic AI, agent AI. This is basically the ability, we've talked about this in the past, of AI actually doing tasks for you. Complicated, multi-layered tasks, contacting people, organizing things. That's a big opportunity longer term. But you are correct, Melissa. This is about getting people to recognize that their current phone isn't nearly good enough, and I think that they hit it. This is the biggest day for Apple since the iPhone, full stop.
So, Gene, Tim, I'm going to kind of repeat my view because I think I'm more in agreement with you, and that's not what I'm here to do, is say, hey, but what I'm hearing is that every major technology company, including Microsoft and ChatGPT and Google, know they have to work with Apple. And that this is still, this installed base is the ticket to implementation for the biggest AI companies in the world. But it doesn't happen without Apple. And so the question really is, because if we all agree that the refresh isn't that compelling or necessary until 25, what are they going to do? What is it going to require for them from a technology perspective to get that phone in shape to be able to support all this?
So this year, their overall business is going to be up about 2%. Calendar 24 is not going to be a particularly good year. It's going to be better than the down 2% over the past year and a half. But so to answer your question, there's not a lot that they can do now. This really comes down to what's going to happen in the fall. And I predict there's going to be 10, 15% of the base is going to get these devices. They're going to show it to their friends, and they're going to want to get their next. They're going to want to move to upgrade. So I think this is a very real upgrade cycle. I do caution that my one cautionary piece is I'm talking about 1 to 3 good years. I think the stock goes up on that. There is an underlying question about where does the core competency of AI lie. Apple did 2 today. They're working with GPT. They're doing some of their own, but you really have to have all of your AI under your control for your destiny. That's a challenge longer term for Apple. It's a challenge for Google. It's a challenge for Microsoft and Amazon. So I think that from a technical standpoint, Tim, what do they need to do? They need to do all this stuff themselves. They can't rely on a third party to power these insights.
What do you make of this, Gene? If Apple integrates, I'm reading, so apologies, OpenAI at the OS level, then Apple devices will be banned at my companies. That's Elon Musk, who seems to have some problem with Apple. I mean, does that make any sense? Or other people going to have those same concerns?
I think highly of Elon. it's hard to read what he's thinking there. I would say this: when it comes to privacy, Apple's not perfect, but they're better than, definitely better than Google when it comes to privacy, or Meta, and those are really some of your other choices. And so I think that this is, I think Elon's kind of surfing the headlines today and trying to poke the bear. And I don't think there's going to be any substance. I don't think outside of China, you'll definitely see this in China, but outside of China, I would be very surprised if you see organizations starting to ban Apple devices based on access to generative AI.
Gene, it's Dan. I consider you a great friend. You've been a great friend of the show for a very long time. I respect your work tremendously.
Thank you.
But I want to give you the opportunity to take back that comment that this is the biggest day for Apple since they launched the iPhone in 2007.
I've thought a lot about it since March 26th. That's when Greg Jaws put the text out that said this is basically saying this is going to be an AI event. I thought about what the iPhone brought. Really what the iPhone did is it added touch. Why that's so important is that opened up the whole concept of having apps on your device. It changed a phone to a computer in your pocket. That was through touch. That was a huge deal. It took years to fully realize that potential. When it comes to AI, the ability to infuse intelligence throughout all of the products to allow you to do things different, in my view, is a bigger step forward than touch. And I think touch was the last big one with the iPhone. So have a ton of respect. I love you, Dan. I'm going to stand behind that. I think this is the biggest day since 2007.